You're standing in the middle of a forest. No phone, no compass, no road, no trail, just trees. In every direction, identical trees. You don't know which way is north. You don't know which way is south. You don't even know which direction you came from. Because the ground beneath your feet looks exactly the same as it did 3 hours ago. Your water ran out this morning. Your legs are shaking. The sun is dropping fast. And here's the part that should terrify you. You have no idea, not even a guess, which direction leads home. Now, most people think this is a modern problem. A hiker who forgot their GPS, a tourist who wandered too far off the trail. But rewind the clock 30,000 years. No maps exist. No roads exist. No signs exist. No trails exist. There is nothing. Nothing. Built by human hands to tell you where you are. And yet, humans didn't just survive this. They crossed entire continents on foot. They navigated oceans without instruments. They found their way home across hundreds of kilometers of featureless terrain. In the dark. How? How is that even possible? Let's start with something most people don't realize. Getting lost isn't what you think it is. You probably imagine getting lost as a slow, gradual thing. You take a wrong turn, then another. Then eventually you look around and think, I don't recognize this. That's not how it works. Getting lost happens in an instant. One moment you're fine, you feel oriented, confident, and then, like a switch flipping inside your brain, the world stops making sense. Left doesn't feel like left anymore. The direction you came from suddenly feels like the direction you were going. Scientists call this spatial disorientation. And here's what makes it so dangerous. You don't know it's happening. Your brain doesn't send you a warning. There's no alarm, no red flag, no little voice saying, hey, you're confused. Instead, your brain does something far worse. It makes up an answer. It invents a direction, picks one, commits to it, and fills you with total confidence that you're heading the right way, even when you're walking directly away from safety. This is why search and rescue teams find lost hikers miles from where they expected to be. Not because they panicked, not because they gave up, but because their brain told them with absolute certainty that the wrong direction was right. Now imagine dealing with that 30,000 years ago. No trail markers, no rescue teams, no satellite signal. No helicopter. Just you, your legs, and a brain that's actively lying to you. And it gets worse, because there's another problem no one talks about. When you're lost in a modern forest, you know one thing for certain. Civilization exists. Somewhere out there, maybe 5 miles, maybe 50, there's a road, a town, a building, something. Ancient humans didn't have that. If you walked in the wrong direction 30,000 years ago, there was no road waiting for you, no village over the next hill, no river that led to a city. There was just more wilderness for thousands of kilometers, in every direction. A wrong turn didn't mean being late. A wrong turn meant death. So how did they do it? How did humans navigate a planet with no infrastructure, no technology, and no external reference system? Most people assume the answer is simple. They just knew the area. They followed rivers. They remembered landmarks. And sure, that sounds reasonable, until you think about it for more than 10 seconds. Let's say you're a human living 40,000 years ago. Your group is camped near a water source. You need food, so you leave camp and walk into the wilderness to hunt. You walk for hours. You follow animal tracks. The trail twists, doubles back, leads you through dense vegetation, up a ridge, down a valley, through a stream. You've been walking for 6 hours. Now you need to get home. Just retrace your steps, right? Except you weren't paying attention to your steps. You were paying attention to the animal. Your eyes were locked on tracks, on broken branches, on disturbed soil. You weren't memorizing the route, you were hunting. And even if you tried to retrace your path, here's the thing about walking through wilderness. It looks completely different going the other direction. That distinctive rock you passed 3 hours ago, it has a completely different shape from the other side. That fork in the stream looks like a straight path when you approach from the opposite direction. The hill you climbed, you can't even see it anymore because you're now looking at it from behind a ridge that didn't exist from the other angle. The landscape has rearranged itself. So landmarks won't save you. Not reliably, not over long distances, not through terrain you've never crossed before. Okay, what about the sun? Most people think ancient humans just followed the sun, east in the morning, west in the evening. Simple. Except the sun doesn't rise due east, and it doesn't set due west. Its position shifts every single day depending on the season and your latitude. In summer, in northern regions, the sun rises in the northeast and sets in the northwest. The arc it traces across the sky changes constantly. So, unless you've been tracking the sun's movement pattern for months and mentally calculating its seasonal drift relative to your current latitude, which, by the way, you don't know and the sun gives you a rough guess at best. Not exactly life-saving precision. What about stars? Stars are better. The North Star barely moves. It hangs near true north night after night. But here's the catch. You can only see stars at night. And if it's cloudy, which in many climates means half the year, you see nothing. And here's the deeper catch. Knowing which way is north doesn't help you if you don't know where you are relative to where you need to be. North is a direction. It's not a destination. You can walk perfectly north for 200 kilometers and end up just as dead as if you walked in circles, because your camp was to the southeast. So the sun is unreliable, the stars are limited, landmarks are deceptive, and retracing your steps is nearly impossible. Yet ancient humans traveled vast distances, across deserts, through forests, over mountain ranges, across frozen tundra, and found their way home. Not sometimes. Consistently. Entire civilizations depended on humans being able to navigate without any of the tools we consider essential. Something else was going on. Something most modern humans have completely lost. In the 1980s, researchers began studying Aboriginal Australians who still practiced traditional navigation. What they found didn't just challenge assumptions about navigation, it challenged assumptions about the human brain. These navigators could cross hundreds of kilometers of outback, terrain that looks almost identical in every direction, flat red earth stretching to the horizon, and arrive at a specific waterhole they'd only visited once before. No compass, no map, no GPS. No written directions. The researchers were baffled, so they started testing. They drove a navigator deep into unfamiliar territory along winding roads for hours. Then they stopped and asked, "Which direction is camp?" Without hesitating, without looking at the sun, without any visible calculation, the navigator pointed. He was accurate to within a few degrees. They tried again, different route, different terrain, blindfolded during parts of the drive. Same result. It was as if he had a compass inside his skull, and in a way, he did. Here's what the researchers discovered. These navigators weren't using landmarks. They weren't using the sun. They weren't using any single external cue. They were using something far more powerful. They were using dead reckoning. Dead reckoning is a navigation method where you track your position by continuously calculating your speed, direction, and time since your last known location. You don't need to see where you are. You just need to keep a running mental tally of every turn, every change in speed, every shift in direction, constantly updating an internal model of your position. Sailors used this for centuries with instruments. A compass, a clock, a speed log. But these navigators were doing it in their heads, automatically, unconsciously, without effort, and they'd been doing it since childhood, because, and this is the part that changes everything, their entire language was built around it. In many Aboriginal Australian languages, there are no words for left or right, none. The concept doesn't exist. Instead, every spatial reference uses cardinal directions. North, south, east, west. You don't say, "The cup is to your left." You say, "The cup is to the west." You don't say, "Move the chair to the right." You say, "Move the chair to the north." Which means, Kai, to speak a single sentence, you need to know which direction you're facing at all times, every moment of every day. From the age of 2 or 3, children in these cultures are forced by their own language to maintain a constant, unconscious awareness of their orientation in space. By adulthood, it's effortless. It's as automatic as breathing, and their brains physically reflect this. Neuroscientists studying expert navigators have found that the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for spatial memory and navigation, is measurably larger and more active in people who navigate without technological aids. The famous London taxi driver study showed the same pattern. Drivers who spent years memorizing London's maze of streets had significantly enlarged hippocampi compared to bus drivers who followed fixed routes. The brain grows the hardware it needs, and ancient humans needed it desperately. But dead reckoning wasn't the only tool. Because here's another layer no one talks about. Ancient humans didn't navigate alone. They navigated as a group. And the group had something no individual could replicate: distributed memory. One person remembered the smell of a particular valley, damp earth and pine resin, and knew it meant water was nearby. Another remembered that a certain bird call meant the coast was within a day's walk. Another remembered that the prevailing wind shifted direction near a specific mountain pass. No single person held the complete map. The map existed across the minds of the entire group, and they transmitted it in a way that's almost hard to believe. They sang it. Aboriginal Australians created something called songlines, oral narratives, sung in precise sequences that described the landscape in musical form. Each verse corresponded to a landmark, a water source, a danger, a route. The song was the map, and because music is one of the most powerful mnemonic devices the human brain possesses, far more memorable than spoken instructions, these songlines persisted for generations. Some songlines are estimated to be over 10,000 years old. 10,000 years of accumulated navigational data, stored not in books, not in computers, but in melody. And this wasn't unique to Australia. Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of kilometers of open ocean. No land in sight, no instruments, nothing but water in every direction, using a mental system so sophisticated that Western sailors couldn't replicate it with their best tools. They read the ocean, the pattern of waves, the color of the water, the behavior of birds, the shape of clouds, the way the current felt against the hull of the canoe. They built a mental model of the entire Pacific Ocean, an internal chart of wave patterns, star positions, island chains, and current flows, and held it in their heads. European navigators who encountered them couldn't believe it. Some refused to believe it. They assumed the Polynesians were simply lucky. They weren't lucky. They were using a navigation system that took a lifetime to master, a system so deeply embedded in their neural architecture that it felt less like thinking and more like sensing. They didn't calculate where they were. They felt it. And here's where this story takes a turn nobody expects. Because this ability, this extraordinary, almost superhuman navigational sense, isn't something only ancient humans had. You have it too. Right now, sitting wherever you are. Your brain contains the same neural machinery that guided humans across continents and oceans for 300,000 years. It's called the entorhinal cortex, and inside it are specialized neurons that scientists didn't even discover until 2005. They're called grid cells. Grid cells fire in precise geometric patterns as you move through space, creating an invisible hexagonal coordinate system overlaid on the world around you. They don't respond to landmarks. They don't respond to visual cues. They respond purely to movement, tracking your speed, direction, and distance with mathematical precision. Combined with place cells in the hippocampus, neurons that fire only when you're in a specific location, and head direction cells that act like an internal compass, your brain contains a complete, self-contained navigation system. It's running right now, even indoors. Even when you're not paying attention, the hardware is there, but here's the part that should haunt you. You're not using it. Studies show that people who rely on GPS navigation show measurable reduction in hippocampal activity. The brain region that ancient humans depended on for survival is shrinking, literally losing gray matter, because we've outsourced its job to a 4-inch screen. A study at McGill University found that longtime GPS users had less gray matter in their hippocampus than age-matched controls who navigated by memory. And reduced hippocampal volume is one of the earliest biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease. Let that sink in. The tool designed to keep us from getting lost might be making us lose ourselves. And it's not just GPS. Think about what maps did to humanity. Before maps, every human being was a navigator. They had to be. Navigation wasn't a skill, it was survival. Every person in every group contributed to the collective spatial knowledge of the community. Then maps arrived. And suddenly, you didn't need to know where you were. You just needed to look at the paper. The knowledge moved from inside the brain to outside it, from a living, dynamic, constantly updated internal model to a static image on a surface. And once it was outside, the pressure to maintain it inside disappeared. Generation by generation, the navigational instinct, not the hardware, but the training of the hardware began to erode. We didn't lose the ability. We stopped developing it. And now we've taken one more step. We didn't just externalize the map, we externalized the decision-making. GPS doesn't just show you where you are. It tells you where to go, turn by turn, instruction by instruction. Your brain doesn't need to plan a route. It doesn't need to orient itself. It doesn't need to remember anything. It just follows orders. 300,000 years of navigational evolution, grid cells, place cells, head direction cells, the hippocampus, the entorhinal cortex, songlines, star maps, wave reading, dead reckoning, all of it, an entire cognitive empire built over millennia, replaced by a voice saying, in 300 meters, turn right. So go back to the beginning. You're standing in a forest. No phone, no map, no trail, and now you know something you didn't know 20 minutes ago. Your brain was built for this moment. Every neuron, every grid cell, every navigational circuit in your skull was shaped by millions of years of ancestors who faced this exact scenario, and won. The problem isn't that you can't find your way home. The problem is that you've never had to try. We built a world where getting lost is almost impossible. Turn-by-turn directions, real-time satellite positioning, digital maps of every road, trail, and alley on Earth. And in doing so, we've done something unprecedented in the history of our species. We've created humans who can find any place on the planet, but who may have forgotten what it feels like to truly know where they are. The ancient navigators didn't just know their position, they knew their world. It was woven into their language, their songs, their dreams. The landscape lived inside them, a constantly shifting, breathing, mental model of the earth beneath their feet. They didn't travel through the world, they carried the world inside them. And maybe that's the real question this story is asking. We haven't gotten lost less often. We've just stopped noticing that we're lost, in a much deeper way than any map could ever fix. The next time your GPS tells you to turn right, notice how your brain feels. Quiet, passive, empty. That silence, it used to be filled with something extraordinary.